What's up, guys? We're also going to be talking about. I missed this one as well. My bad, right? But let me redeem myself and explain to you guys what the American Revolution was. We're going to explore the key events, battles, and the factors that led to colonists' ultimate success in gaining independence from Britain. Okay, because that's what we've been talking about for the last week. So let's go ahead and move on. Short lecture today, obviously. But yeah, just keep up. So if we were in class, I would have given you guys some time to turn and talk, but we don't have that right now. And so I guess you could pause the video. But to guide our journey through this presentation, I'd like you to keep in mind this question, right? What are the factors that contribute to colonist success in the American Revolution? And by the end of our discussion or the end of the lecture, I hope you have a more clear understanding of the various elements that came together to shape the outcome of the historic conflict, okay? That's my goal. And if you have any questions, like I said, text me on Teams, email me. I'll try to answer it as much as I can. Okay, let's get started. So let's go over the first slide, right? Where it's talking about the First Continental Congress in September 1774, right? And so during this time period, from various colonies gathered in Philadelphia for what to become the First Continental Congress. At this point, most Americans didn't want their independence. They simply wanted to restore their relationship with Britain to how it was before the 7 Years' War, which we had talked about last week, right? They endorsed the Suffolk Resolves, which called for repeal of the Tolerable Acts. They also passed a declaration and resolved, which petitioned the king to make it right with the colonial governments, but acknowledged that Parliament had the authority to regulate commerce. The Congress agreed that if nothing had changed, they will meet again in the year 1775, and this was an important step towards unifying the colonies, right? So, from the time period September 5th to October 24th, 1774, this is what's going on during that time. It's the Americans did not want their independence from Britain, but they wanted to restore something. So that's what's going on during that time. Pretty much, we'll get more in depth during these next couple slides. So we come to April 1775, right? Where the first shots of American Revolution were fired at the place, it says on the title, Lexington and Concord, right? So the British troops were British troops were actually stationed in Boston, right? But they were sent to seize colonial military supplies in Concord, right? But thanks to the warnings from the writers Paul Revere and William Downes, the colonial Minutemen were ready, but they were forced to retreat under heavy British fire. Although it was a small skirmish, it marked the beginning of an open conflict between the colonies and Great Britain, right? So, but yeah, just go ahead and take that information with you, the first shots. And let's go on. All right, so about a month later, in May 1775, the Second Continental Congress had met in Philadelphia, but this time they began to prepare for war by calling troops. Though they hadn't still declared independence, they were still authorized to take Quebec in hopes of drawing Canada away from the British influence, right? And despite these actions, there was still a strong desire amongst many delegates to resolve their issue with Britain peacefully. So just keep that in mind. This is what's happening in May 1775. And let's go ahead and write down the notes if you haven't already, and let's move on. So now let's go ahead and talk about one of the earlier major battles, the Battle of Bunker Hill, right? So this actually took place in Breeds Hill. This is a month after the Second Continental Congress had met in Philadelphia. So this is taking place in June 1775. The colonial militia forfeited British Hill, right? The British basically launched a full-scale attack, and although they eventually captured the hill, they suffered over 1,000 casualties, right? A lot of people died during this. This battle demonstrated that the colonists were capable of standing up to the British army, even though they were not ready to yet claim victory. So, This is what's going on. As you guys can see in that picture, man, there is a lot of war going on. And I can't really read to you what that says on the bottom, but let's go ahead and move on. Okay, let's go ahead and start slide 7, right? So despite these battles going on, and in hope for peace, we're going to be talking about the Olive Branch Petition. And this took place in July 1775, and they sent the Olive Branch Petition to King George III, right, pledging their loyalty to the crown and asking him to intervene with the parliament on their behalf. But unfortunately, the king responded by the Prohibitory Act in August, declaring that the colonies to be in rebellion and forbidding all trades between Britain and the colonies, right? In the response to make it clear that it would be peaceful resolution was no longer possible. So go ahead and write down these notes. This is what's going on during this time in July 1775. As you guys can see, forbid all trades and shipping between Britain and the colonies. So this was not looking good for them, right? So go ahead and take a second if you haven't already, write down the notes, and let's move on. So with the hopes of reconciliation was gone, right? It was gone during this time. The push for independence became stronger, right? As we can see in this painting, this was called the birth of the flag, right? And it symbolizes the moment the colonies had fully embraced the idea of becoming an independent nation. This marks a turning point in the revolution where the fight was no longer about the rights as British citizens, but forming a new country. So as you guys can see, that's one of the first American flags. As you guys can see, it shows 13 stars, right? So which is basically symbolizing the 13 colonies. So independence, pushing for it. That's what they were thinking at that time. Well, that's what they were pushing for. That's what I talked about. So let's go ahead and move on. So in slide 9, we're going to be talking about the British advantages during the war, right? So we could first point out the significant portion of colonial population during this time, which was 1/4 to 1/3 remained loyal to the British, right? This loyalty gave support to the British and an advantage in some regions. Additionally, Britain had a well-trained and well-funded military that was supported by Native American tribes such as the Iroquois, right? And lastly, they had a financial strength to maintain regular troops and sustain a prolonged conflict. So they were able to pay regular troops during this time, which was, one of the most advantages for the British during this time. And since they were allied with the Iroquois tribes, the military was older, right? They were able to make partner with them, and the loyalists, as it says, opposition. There was a lot of people still remaining loyalty to Britain during this time. So that was the advantages that we talked about on the slide. Go ahead and write down the guided notes if you haven't already, but let's go ahead and move on. Okay guys, keep up with me. We're almost done for this lecture. We only have about 2 more slides. This is slide 10, so let's talk about the colonial advantages, right? So, however, the colonials had their own advantages, just like the British did, right? They were familiar with the terrain and were deeply motivated by the idea of self-governments. Though the Continental Army was, disorganized, but it was led by George Washington, right? So that was one of their strongest advantages they had during that time. And they had key battles such as the Battle of Saratoga in 1777 and Yorktown in 1781. These were big moments, and they showcased that the resilience and strategies abilities of the Continental Force was strong. So these were the advantages that they had. Let's go ahead and move on to slide 11. So we'll be talking about colonial advantages again in slide 11. So let's go ahead and get into it real quick. This is the last slide of the lecture, as you guys will be doing most of the heavy lifting in the other one. So one of the most significant factors in the colonial success was the assistance from the European allies during this time, right? As you guys can see in the second bubble, I guess you could say bubble, whatever. After the Battle of Saratoga in 1778, France began to provide naval assistance, right? which was crucial to the colonial victory, right? So Marquis de Lafayette, which is a French aristocrat, right? Aristocrat, which is basically like a French military guy, which was really high back then, was instrumental in leading troops, right? Especially in the defense in Battle of Yorktown, right? During that time, this was support from European powers greatly shifted the balance in favor of the American colonists during this time. So, ideological similarities was self-government at stake, right? They both wanted self-governments at this time. And also it mentions that women were key players as camps, hands, and medical aid. So they shared a lot of similarities, and they were assistants to European allies, like I just mentioned. The leadership, the Marquis de Lafayette, if I said it right, he was the leadership of Yorktown during that time. So he was really crucial to the battle that happened in Battle of Saratoga in 1778. So let's go ahead and let's go on to the next slide. So during this time period, during the class, you guys were able to watch the video on the American Revolution Review and answer these questions, and I will be checking for completion when I get back. Like I said, thank you guys for watching today's lecture. It was pretty fast, it went pretty smooth. And like I said, if you have any questions, text me on Teams or email me. I'm always available, except at night, all right? Because I'm asleep. I'm an old man in a young guy's body. I need my sleep, so thank you for watching.